rich chocolate, the crunchy luxury.
I start on them right after breakfast.
Pressure of 999 millibars. Now, at least earlier we didn't really see purely tropical characteristics, and it's slowly taking on more and more tropical characteristics, but it's more or less kind of a hybrid system though. There it is right there swirling across the Atlantic, again several hundred miles north and east of Puerto Rico. Latest satellite imagery indicating more of kind of a closed circulation pattern. It's a low pressure area, and it has been producing some gale force winds over portions of the Atlantic. And we've also had some very deep convection too, most of the convection now firing off on the north and east side of the center of circulation. Here's a closer perspective of Tropical Storm Grace. Again, a big ball of convection, and most of this is located north and east of the center of circulation. Now, the good news is that it continues to move rapidly to the east-northeast, so it is pulling away from the islands, but still we have this little plume of moisture that's feeding in across the islands, and still that risk for some scattered showers, we think, at least for the next day or so around Puerto Rico and over towards the Virgin Islands. Some of the rain could be rather heavy, and at least this morning there were some flash flood watches out for this area. Again, there's the main deep convection. Now, the latest forecast models are indicating that this tropical storm will probably more or less hold its own, with winds roughly about 45 miles per hour for the next couple of days. Now, one thing severely inhibiting any further development is the fact that we have some very strong winds. Strong southwesterly winds is kind of ripping through this area, so those winds will have a negative effect on this tropical system. So again, it's very unlikely that this will intensify much more than what it is right now. There's Tropical Storm Grace once again. Again, it's pulling away from the islands, and as we head over towards the Lesser Antilles, at least the southern fringes, it's actually not looking that bad this afternoon. We'll be seeing some fair skies, we think, and some nice quiet conditions through Trinidad, Tobago as well, and the Grenadines in pretty good shape. Farther to the south, though, we've had some weak disturbances drifting off towards the west, but we're not really anticipating any development with these. In the Gulf of Mexico, looks pretty cloudy. And these are clouds in association with an old front that's still kind of meandering its way across the southeastern part of the country. Again, the cloudy skies, scattered showers too in association with the front. They're kind of scattered about, and they're not very organized, so I'm not really anticipating any tropical development to take place either across the Gulf of Mexico.
Once you pop, the fun don't stop. Oh, if that cat were here,
The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is sponsored by Honda Generators. Power when you need it.
Well, we have a new tropical storm out in the Atlantic Ocean. The name is Grace. It just formed there this morning. That's that same disturbed area that we have been watching for several days around Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. It's moved very rapidly since yesterday. Right now it's moving toward the east-northeast about 29 miles an hour. So this, after only being able to find one tropical storm out there, a hurricane actually, in the combined months of August and September, this is actually the second October storm we've seen, but it is not a very powerful storm, not expected to become very powerful, very likely won't last very long either. Fabian, the previous one, was out basically in this same area, and that only lasted one day before it was declared non-tropical. We can show you on the satellite picture where it is as we look at the overall picture here. Don't seem to be able to get that picture advanced in there. Perhaps we could do, there we are. There it is. It's moving toward the east-northeast, and the only area that threatens anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean conceivably would be way out in the Azores Islands. So right now it's just a threat to shipping. It's still tied up with this old funnel trough there actually, so it may lose its tropical characteristics pretty soon. The upper level southwesterly winds are very strong, and the only reason this is not being sheared a great deal is the fact that the low-level circulation itself is moving toward the east at a pretty rapid rate of speed. We can focus in on that for you. Right there it is Again, since it was named a storm at 11 o'clock Eastern Time this morning, we haven't seen it getting any better organized at all, and we don't think it's likely to get much stronger the way it appears to us at this time. We're showing now the upper winds out in the Atlantic, and we notice that we have this high pressure area here out northeast of the islands, and that flow around the northern periphery of it. That's where the strong southwest winds are. Well, while we're talking about this high, we've been telling you for several weeks almost now that we wouldn't be able to get any development out in the Atlantic east of the islands because of upper level westerly winds. But with this high now in place, it's pretty far south, but just to the south of it we do have easterly winds, and we do have a tropical wave out there, so we'll have to kind of watch that. I'll show you that a little bit closer. Meanwhile, back in the USA here, we have this trough of low pressure digging in the eastern part of the country, and that's going to bring some non-tropical weather, widespread rain, and some pretty windy conditions, also high tides, atmospheric oceanic tides, because the new moon was just the full moon rather was just yesterday, so the astronomical tides are a bit higher than they normally are. So we'll take a look at all these areas one at a time now. In the Gulf of Mexico, we've had a front come into the Gulf. It's about stationary now, sort of fading out as far as the clouds and showers are concerned, except down here in the Bay of Campeche we have some clusters of showers hanging on. In the Gulf of Western Caribbean rather, the pressures are pretty low out here, but we don't have any concentration of showers there any place, so nothing is likely to develop from that quarter anytime soon. Now this is a tropical wave I mentioned. It's now about 800 miles away from the Windward Islands and moving toward the west about 20 miles per hour or so. And because of this high up to the north and the fact that you have these easterly winds over it now, we wouldn't write this off completely. Right now it's not really forecast to develop, but it is something we'll be watching in the next day or two, and if we see any change there, of course we'll let you know right away if anything should come of that we need to be concerned about.
No place on Earth has better weather.
Glad you could join us here at the Weather Channel as we look at the tropics. We do this every hour at 50 minutes after the hour from June 1st until November 30th, which spans the Atlantic hurricane season. The 1997 season has been a fairly quiet one. We have now had 7 named storms, 3 hurricanes. One of those hurricanes did manage to attain what is called major hurricane status, a category 3 or more on the Saffir-Simpson scale. That was Erica, but of course it didn't affect land. Our latest storm is Grace. As of 11 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, which is the same as Eastern Daylight Time, Grace is moving very quickly. 30 miles an hour it is traveling east-northeastward. Its top winds about 45 miles an hour and not forecast to get any stronger by the National Hurricane Center. And it is centered about 1,700 miles southwest of the Azores. Now you may ask, why refer to its land position from land that is so far away from it? Because that's the direction it's heading. You can see our track dots here showing it's heading out into the open Atlantic, and it is not a threat to any land at all. Here it is here, and you can see it's tracking right along the northern side of this upper-level high pressure system here out in the central Atlantic, which has some pretty strong winds at the upper levels, and it is just flinging Grace out into the Atlantic and away from all the land. Those same strong winds here over the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean are keeping those 2 areas quiet, and those are 2 of the areas that most often see development during this time of the year, mid to late October in the hurricane season. But those are very quiet. On the southern side of our high pressure area, though, we have some easterly winds, and we have a little disturbance here to the south of the high pressure area that we'll take a look at momentarily. But let's bring our attention here a little closer in on Grace. We go to the colorized satellite picture, where the oranges and the reds show the very high cloud tops where you're likely to be finding the thunderstorms underneath those clouds. And you can see that as the National Hurricane Center described it in its latest advisory, Grace is an amorphous blob. How's that for a kind of neat phrase there? You can see it doesn't really have any strong organization to it, but it does still have some convection. But it is forecast to be weakening here over the next about 48 to 72 hours as it continues to move off to the east-northeast and eventually over colder waters and becomes extratropical. Now, let us return to the areas that are typically very likely areas of development of tropical activity here in mid to late October, but not right now. The Gulf, very quiet. You can see those westerly winds whipping across the Gulf, and there's really no activity going on of any convection, any thunderstorms, and you need to get that activity before you can start up a tropical system. Same thing applies in the Caribbean. Nothing going on over the water, some development over the land, but that's your typical afternoon pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Now remember I said there was that disturbance a little to the south of the high? Well, here's the high here. You can see the winds moving from west to east to the north of it, and then from east to west to the south of the high. We do have some convection. It's starting to fire up a little bit better. National Hurricane Center says that if this does develop, it'll do it very slowly. So we're not concerned about it right yet, but we will be watching it because it is traveling eastward, and of course we do have the Lesser Antilles out here. Let's flip over in toward the coast of Africa. Not much happening. Some showers and thunderstorms down here off the coast, but they're fairly far south in latitude, so really not much of a problem at all. This is not a favorite area for development now this late in the hurricane.